Use the talents you are given. The forest would be very quiet if only the best birds sang. But that to me is the beauty of this book. It brings together birds of all different tones, whether you're a crow or a canary, a galah, a cockatoo, whatever the songbird type you are, it's all printed here in words. And I really enjoyed reading through. This took me back to my childhood in a way that I couldn't remember other things, but I could connect with some of the poems in here. So, for example, poems related to the bike ride, which took me back to, as a child, you're riding down the road, and to me, you know, going 500 metres down the road was like a journey to the other part of the world when I was a child. I grew up in a rural environment, so the cows in the paddock, I could connect with that. Things like the sugarcane juice. I grew up on the north coast, surrounded by cane fields, and knew how sweet sugar was. And so one of the things I can remember was thinking that if I can grab a piece of sugarcane and munch on it, I'd get that sweet taste. It wasn't quite like that. Sugarcane, if you've ever chewed it, is not quite like the sugar you get in a shop. But that poem took me back to that memory. As well, things like the Bow and Mango, the poem, and the other poem by Mango, or called Mango, by Emerson. It must be mango season, having the mango featured. I can clearly remember as a child climbing the bow and mango tree in my grandparents' yard. I can clearly remember it because there was a wasp nest in that tree, which I discovered once I was up there, and came down very quickly with a few stings to remember it by. I can also remember the one from Todd Thomas, I think it is. Yes, The Stick, Memories of an Era Past. I grew up as a child where the stick was used from loving parents to correct me. That took me back. Thankfully, it's an era past. But there are good memories in the poems in here that you can bring out in people. So I'm sure all of you, in reading it through, have different memories. And I think that's the beauty of this book. And really a credit to you, Carolyn, for pulling such a project together. Not once, but if you read the back, you'll notice it's 5 times. So it's that ongoing passion and commitment that you've had to this project, but also to people like David Musgrave. David, the effort that you've put in to have this project come to fruition, thank you. And for Jean Kent as well, for the contribution to the book and the success of it, but also to the students. And at risk of missing somebody, let me acknowledge you, and maybe Jane will correct this list later because I know you're acknowledging the students as well, but to Larissa, to Kayla, to Linda, to Emerson, Jefferson, Belinda, Estelle, Christian, Anya, Cara, Bethany, Samantha, Melanie, and Dale. It is a pleasure to read your work, to be placed in a book with prestigious authors, as budding authors. It's a credit to you and to the people that helped bring it together, such as Carolyn. So welcome today, and I look forward to hearing more of the poems that are read today and evoking more memories from what we hear. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Sometimes you're lucky enough that your work is joyous, and this is one of those times. A special welcome to the students. It's nice to see you outside of the context of stress and assessments, and just so that we can be here together and relax. And again, Jean and David, what a magnificent collaboration working with both of you. Thank you so very much. I just have a quote from one of our old anthologies because I wanted to set the scene for today. And in our previous A Way of Happening, we really channeled the great Seamus Heaney because it was in the year of his death. But I think no one says it better than him about why we're here and what poetry can do. And he says this: I credit poetry both for being itself and being a help, for making possible a fluid and restorative relationship between the mind's centre and its circumference. I credit it because credit is due to it, in our time and in all time, for its truth to life, in every sense of that phrase. So we're here today for truth for life, and there's probably just a couple of moments that I think surround that, and it's really a vote of gratitude for several people. Some will be thanked more fully in due course with Jane. Thank you for doing that. But I do want to start with thanking, of course, the students who, without their work, this wouldn't come into being. Without their capacity to take courageous risks with expression, wouldn't come into being. And of course, the beautiful mentorship that comes from senior and established poets that we have with us today, and many who aren't here, who tirelessly, in effect, donate their work to this great enterprise of giving you that joy of seeing your words on the page. So a general vote of thanks around that generosity. But really significantly, in the engine room, where the wheels are coming off and Macs aren't talking to PCs and words are dropping off files and chaos abounds, in that space we have the tireless work of Margaret House. And Marg, I just cannot thank you enough for really, I'm just going to call you the Brains Trust, the Formatting Brains Trust, and I'd just like you to come down now before we get underway to say thank you. And if there's any mistakes, don't bother writing to Margaret, myself, David or Jean, just saying, because there's a lot of work juggling all of that. The other person I'd really like to thank is Emma Califf. We'd like to present a book to you today. You have opened up this beautiful hub of the library, which is the beating heart of the institution. So thank you for hosting us. Okay, the beautiful artwork. Normally the graphic design students tender and design the cover for this text. This year we had this incredible generous act of Donna Pinter designing our cover. She was going to be here today, but a family commitment came up. So in Donna's absence, could we just send out to the universe a very beautiful vote of thanks for her artistic creativity and work? I'm going to clap her in the universe. Now, as you would know, the tradition of these anthologies, we always have a considered moment where we think who we might like to dedicate the anthology to. So this year is quite special for me, not that I want to self-indulge too much, but a decade ago, Judith Beveridge and I began a project with people with life-threatening illnesses, where we invited them to reflect and write poetry and try and process or work through some of those, I guess, confronting challenges when your life is threatened by illness. The product of that was this text. Now, this text is very special to me because it's 10 years since we actually published this first piece of work, and within this text is a beautiful story of an older lady called Winifred Lubin, who, I won't go into all of her medical history, but what I will suffice to say, she was highly traumatised, and it was just so amazing to see her use poetry to reflect and take her out of that space of fear into spaces of remembrance and restoration. So she wrote a poem about her trip to Japan. And when I said to her not so long ago, she's now in a residential care facility and is bedbound. So in my last visit to her this week, I said to her, Win, you know, we've actually dedicated in part this book to you and your incredible engagement with poetry to celebrate all that you've achieved in that space. What was important to me in that is that Wynne can't be here today. She's 91, but I actually have recorded her reading her poem. I don't know if we're going to be able to hear it very well, but you actually have her poem on your chair. So if you're able to have a look at, it's called A Moment in Japan, and hopefully I'm going to, there's a few goes here where she said, is that all right? So I hope I'm playing the one that is her in her best element. So I'm just going to try and bring Wynne with us here and see how we go.
A moment in Japan. Red, black and white. Koi-carp, yapul. Thick green moss. Paving the sloping ground. Granite rocks sparkling in the sunlight. Red maple leaves drifting softly. The red tide flowing slowly down the slope. Do not hurry. Please do not hurry.
Okay. So you can see why it was important to honour Wynne in this year's edition. We also wanted to honour someone who, from the very outset of the New Leaves anthology, through all 5 iterations of this project, has been a tireless supporter, who began their first life in literature and sharing that love of literature, mentoring that love of poetry and all things literary with their students. I remember when I was first called to Avondale, I was partway through teaching a Year 11 class, and one of the biggest dilemmas was worrying about who was going to take them through to HSC. And it was just a great relief when Jane Farnandez made that possible and took that group through, and they still talk about you, Jane. But I have something even more special than that, and that's one of your former students this morning, just to say a few words, because you too share the dedication with Wynne Lubin this year. So Amber, who's head of English at Lake Macquarie, who's one of Jane's mentees, is going to say a few words in thanks to Jane.
I consider myself so fortunate to have had Jane Farnandez as a teacher and a mentor. She has a unique gift as an educator to challenge her students to think in ways that they never have before and to embrace the great mysteries of life. Jane exemplified Khalil Gibran's teachings about children and education in that, and I quote, "You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts." Jane, on behalf of all the students whose lives you have touched, thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you especially, Amber. This is such a special privilege for me, but especially because of this surprise that I have here, one of the jewels of my class from way back, more than a decade now. And to have you here, Amber, that's the most beautiful and inspiring thing for me at this at this moment in my career and in my life. And I thank you for all the light you gave me, together with your whole band of friends over the years. And you continue to inspire me. Thank you. I do want to say, before, a very warm welcome to each one of you. And I think that it's no surprise that we owe so much to Carolyn and to Judith and to David Musgrave for what, and Jean, for what this project has achieved. And I don't mind sharing with you that that Avondale is on a journey, to University College, We submitted a university college application, and one of the highlights that we featured there was this collaborative project. It takes real courage, inspiration. It takes a real understanding of the inspiration and the power of poetry to change lives and to connect people and to build community. I think it takes that sort of vision, and Carolyn had that vision. And she was the brainchild behind this with Judith, I think, when you first started. And to have David's support in being able to give to Avondale this gift over the last decade, to our students, to our staff, we've all been inspired and changed by this very, very wondrous gift that has come to us through this community you have built through your New Leaves project. And so I thank you for that, Carolyn. And so today I would like to start with my thanks to Dr. Carolyn Rickett, Dr. Jean Kent and David Musgrave, and the poetry class of 2018 for the honor of this dedication, which I'm privileged to share with Winfred Lubin. I hope I live as long as she does. Thank you. On First Looking is a reminder of the power of witness, however tentative and vulnerable that witness might be. It points to the birth of an intangible moment when we may be arrested by an emotion, an event, a dramatic tension that moves us enough to stop to capture our faith, our courage, our love, or our pain in a symphony of words and images. The poetry composite we celebrate today, On First Looking, speaks of the power of the mind's movement to document the freshness, potential, exquisiteness, and fragility of our tentative yet lyrical human witnessing of life itself. It attests to the resilience of love and hope, the pregnant promise of our joys and the weight of our sorrows, to instruct us to live courageously for another moment's witnessing. Our first witnessing points us to something beyond its own shadow, encouraging us to dream of being fully present in a future beyond our momentary glimpses of life and love. Therein lies the secret of our faith in another day of witnessing beyond the here and now, on first looking. So I take this opportunity to congratulate you as national poets, staff, and students for the gift of On First Looking to us here at Avondale and to Australia. To you, national contemporary poets who have lent your time with such grace, elegance, and dedication to us as staff and students of Avondale, my sincere and heartfelt thanks. To you, student poets of Avondale, I congratulate you on your earnest commitment to create and share in this scholarly community. You have found a home in this anthology with distinguished poets and aspiring staff and student poets. You have created touch points with each other to connect to the profound and noble virtue that the gift of poetry represents to us in these challenging times. We celebrate with you the power of poetry for witnessing love, faith, and healing. My particular thanks and congratulations to Dr. Judith Beveridge, Carolyn Rickett, Jean Kent, and David Musgrave for your sustained vision for this collaborative practice, and David for this 5th Puncher and Wattmann poetry series on behalf of Avondale. In my culture, we often talk about the great souls. We have an honorific for great souls, and it's the Mahatma. And I think that, when I think of this project and the inspiration that this project has had for students and for staff, and the way in which it has inspired us to be better than our best, And for many of our students who have gone from here, this has been a starting point as they've taken the poetry, the inspiration of poetry into the hearts and souls of people right across this, country and the world. And that's what poetry is about. And we are so glad that this has been the bakehouse of that. This has been the womb from which you've been able to create, and you've been able to bring together the best of the depth and of your own energies, your own experiences, and be able to create so much beauty out of that. And that's not possible without these three or four, really. I shouldn't forget how important Judith Beveridge was to this project. Great souls, the Mahatmas, that I baptize you today with. And so I do want to thank you, and on behalf of Avondale College, we have a small presentation which Carolyn is going to help with, and that's for Jean. Thank you, Jean. And David. Thank you.
I've been involved with this project since the first of these particular ones, and also with the first leaves, initially as a contributor, and then over the last two book productions as the editor, bringing in the poems from the established poets, as well as doing work with the students. And I have to say that it is one of the joys of my life, really. I love this project. Right from the beginning, I just thought, what a brilliant idea. I grew up in rural Queensland. I loved poetry from the time I was 15 or so, and I was writing very bad poetry from about then on. But I really thought that all poets were in books. I didn't know any real poets, so I depended for a lot of my inspiration on what I read in books, which I did a great deal. But I know from the letters that I started writing to other poets, the contact I eventually got, how incredibly inspiring and encouraging it can be to know that there are other people alive who share your enthusiasm and your passion. So, thank you, Jane, and thank you so much, Carolyn. Without Carolyn, this project just would not exist. She's the driving force behind it. She's the unfailing enthusiasm and passion. And you've kept me in here, even when I said to myself, I've got too much else on this year, I don't think I can do this project. But I also know from the responses I get whenever I write to any of the established poets saying, would you be prepared to send us a couple of poems? And they just write back and say, we love this project as well. So they're very happy to be involved. The students have made this the most extraordinarily wonderful project. You always do. It's all very well to see work by established poets in an anthology, but to see the fresh voices and enthusiasm of new people coming, and to know from looking at your work that you also read poetry, that you're very madly writing away in your rooms at night, we can see that, but you're also enthusiastic about what other people before you have read, and that is wonderful to see. This year, I must admit, when Carolyn asked me to come and teach, I did hesitate because I had a lot of other commitments and I'd sworn I wasn't going to do any teaching this year. However, I remembered what a wonderful time I'd had with the students 2 years ago, and from the moment I entered the classroom with you people, and there you all were, looking so eager. And we looked at the mangoes and the Vegemite and the tea leaves, and I noticed that the poems you wrote in the very first session, some of them have actually ended up in the books. So for somebody coming in just hoping to get you started writing, what more could a teacher hope for? It's just amazing. You're an absolute joy to work with. You're hard work because it was very intense, but you just threw yourselves into it. And seeing what's come into this book as a result has just been so rewarding. So thank you so much. And now I think we're ready to start some readings, because I'm really looking forward to hearing you read. And we've got quite a few people on the list today. So the first person I'd like to ask to come and read is Samantha Nightingale. Oh, okay. Next one is Jefferson Short. Jefferson.
The gardener's heart. A moth searches your stomach. It eats the strings of fabric from the heart. Flutter, flutter. You strum the string as your harp in the garden. You've grown tired of its tune. Twang, twang. The string snaps under your overbearing green thumb, and teardrops form from the nylon. Bleed, bleed. The tears fall off the shoulder onto the soundbox and feed the flower bed. Drip, drip.
And the next person I'd like to ask is Kayla Carter. Kayla.
Tea leaves. The faded hues of autumn crunch in my hand as they fall and land against the bone-white china. The fated circle of life begins as the leaves are dried, preserved. They have been repurposed. Rich memories of summer play in my mind, their rosy petals floating in the breeze, now stained with life, ready for the next. The heady scent of timely demise wafts as hot water overflows their flowery carcasses. A warm embrace, one last labour, now the sweet sting of death.
Thank you, Kayla. That takes me right back to the first class we had. And thank you to Jefferson for your poem. And the next poet is Christian McClellan. Chris.
I need to lift this up a bit. Today I'll be reading Melomania, which is dedicated to Lord Byron. O celestial music, ignite this stagnant air. The silks of sound now woven, a dance of wildfire fair. The calls of countless instruments, the phantasmal tongues your gift. And now in this stream of splendour, you heal our hearts, their rift. For a painter may bleed on canvas, and a sculptor may meld flesh and stone. But your maker gave their heart to you, their pulse to angelic tone. And so this song of heavens, let it play, I say, let it play. Let its colours trace divinity and spark a soul from clay.
Thank you, Chris. Dale Smedley. Dale.
Okay, this one's dedicated to craft food manufacturer. Vegemite. Sitting on the breakfast nook, an icon of a nation. Edible, spreadable, contained within a glassless vessel. Imagine what it could have been, an icon of the world. Edible, spreadable, incredible, but trapped in a glassless vessel. Could it have brought peace to the nations that are at war? Edible, spreadable, incredible, halalable, but resides in a glassless vessel. And what of the future? Could it shape the way we live? Edible, spreadable, incredible, halalable, sustainable, yet remains in a glassless vessel. And if it could break free, the glassless vessel no longer its home. Edible, spreadable, incredible, halalable, sustainable, uncontainable.
Thank you, Dale. That one takes me back to the first class too. I can see everybody looking at the glass, the container of Vegemite as it was passed around, and they were first looking, presumably, at Vegemite. And our next reader is Samantha Nightingale. Sam.
Right, so I'm going to read one of my poems. It's a bit of a fun one, so I hope you enjoy it. It's called The Poem Pisky. Movement in my periphery. It darts behind the laundry hamper. I fix my eyes and tiptoe toward it. Gone. With a flounce, I settle back into my chair, waiting. I hear thudding, feather-light feet. With the speed of an asp, my eyes strike. Vanished. No trace. Moving to the closet, I fling open the doors. The clothes whisper with the leftover breeze. A shadow blocks the light of the window. With a gallop step, I stand before it, my glare trailing the frame. Nothing. Again, settling into the chair, I stare at the bare page, a poem hiding just beyond my grasp. Thank you.
Okay, we just thank you so much, students. So very proud of you. Just before we move on to the next reading from our VIP, I always say VIP because poetry deserves that stature, and so do you. There's just a couple of thanks we wanted to have partway through the program and presentation. So, Jennifer Petrie, we would like to give you a book for your tireless work in supporting students, transforming their space here and celebrating with them today. So thank you for your work. And of course, Gemma, who loves poetry, writes poetry, is creative and is a really important part of our faculty, who has really been such a help this morning and leading up to this event with all the bells and whistles. So Gemma, thank you very much. Okay, so as a way of introducing our VIP guests, when I was writing my thesis, anyone who's written one knows it's a pretty lonely, depressing enterprise. Sorry for anyone who's going through that, but it ends up being in that space. And I came across the most wonderful phrase from Theodore Roethke in one of his poems that says, "We end in joy," which I actually made the last chapter of my thesis. That was the title that I gave it, and it's become a sort of iconic life mantra. But we do end in joy, students and poets, and we're here to celebrate that joy. And one of my first joys of introducing today is Althea Halliday. Many of you will know Althea as a friend, as a teacher. I know her as all those things, but I also know her as a mentor for 40 years of my life, Althea. So thank you so much. Althea has got a long, illustrious teaching career, most recently from Barker College. Her students love her. Her students absolutely flourished under her tutelage. And it's just with great pride and pleasure that we have you today reading one of your poems. In Althea's bio, she uses a quote from Dylan Thomas about loving the words. And if you know Althea, that's the creed she lives by, and she's here today to share some of her words with us. So thank you for coming.
saddlebag. I carry it with me, not in a suitcase or a satchel, but in a saddlebag. In this place, I hear a horse's summer stride, the magpie's call, the crow's guffaw, the creek grown quiet. I see eucalypts, red-tipped, and early wattle, and broad-leafed ironbark. The grass is long and lush, or hard-bitten, frost-bitten. In the gloaming, chimney smoke rises over an iron roof. And I know that below the range grown dark, there is a kettle on the stove, and warmth and conversation and storytelling and love.
Okay, so tears were always going to be present at a poetry event, and I have some of my own. But I also have this great privilege of, you've met Jean, but you've met her in great humility, so it's my role to actually just let you know how brilliant Jean actually is, because she is so understated gracious. And one of the great joys of the students working with her, there's a number of poets who potentially you may not get to work with students because they can be intimidating, or they can be scary, or they can be competitive, but you and Judith just bring that deep humanity to really want to see students flourish. So Jean is one of Australia's leading poets. She has numerous anthologies. One of my favourites of yours, Jean, is Travelling with the Wrong Phrase book, about her time in Paris when she had a Paris residential experience. And those poems I keep returning to. I was at the launch of that, and it was just such a beautiful work. You've also given great importance to the Hunter region with your numerous projects there, particularly the book that you edited with Kit Colleen. So you are always advocating for regional representation, and it's with great pleasure that we get to hear some of your beautiful work today. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm going to read a poem which is set in Paris, which was from one of the residencies. Rue des Deux Ponts. From one end of Rue des Deux Ponts, this is the view, the Eiffel Tower, on the hour, doing its silver lame shimmy. In the distance, for 5 minutes, this shrug against the winter dark. Then we're back to molten honeycomb, trysts and tourist parties, picnics on cold stone. One day in Rue des Deux Ponts, Ile Saint-Louis, there's a patisserie, heaven in the mouth. Millefeuille, opera, everything chocolat. Next day, desire on the tongue, nothing left. A black gap, violent as a tooth extracted. Is it arson? An explosion in the oven? A bomb? The workmen won't talk. Between the knife shop and hole in the wall for ice cream, they start again from emptiness. It's common as history here. Cafes, restaurants, little shops. Winter guts them, then remakes them with a new old face. In a certain light, Even the Eiffel Tower is just rusty lace. From this distance, from this street of two bridges, the mending's simple, electricity in the night, an insouciant sparkle against time. Before green buds begin on spiked trees, the sky shrugs down stars. Every hour, on the hour, a rusty old tower dances, diamanted in the dark. And now it's my pleasure to introduce someone who has a biography in this book which is also extremely humble. David Musgrave has done wonders with publishing these books for us. He's also an extremely accomplished and highly celebrated poet, far more than you're going to discover from what you read in this little bio at the back. But I will give you the bio anyway, just to give you a little taste of who's coming to read for you now. David Musgrave is the author of the novel Glissando, a melodrama. His latest collection of poetry is Anatomy of Voice, Gloria SMH 2016. He runs the publishing company Puncher Wattmann and lectures in creative writing at the University of Newcastle. He has won numerous awards for his poetry. Please welcome David Musgrave.
It's great to be here. I love being part of this project. I think it's such a good thing to do. So thanks very much, Carolyn. Thanks, Avondale College. I'm just going to read a very short poem called The Cave. The cave opens into a blackened roof, veined and drying, and out of it issuing sighs or rattles. So small, and yet it dominates the room. Wetting now and then with swabs does nothing to slow down the shallowing breath, the chill creeping in from the limbs. Through it all, her eyes stay open, seeing everything and nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next reader is a local poet who is also a major force in the publishing poetry community of Lake Macquarie and the Hunter region. So if any of you, and especially you students, are going to be in this area from now on, please look out for the things that Linda Ryland is doing here. She runs a wonderful reading session at Morisset once a month, the second Sunday of the month, where poets of all voices, all types come together, often first-time readers, but everybody is welcome to come along and read there. So Linda Ryland has had work published in several Hunter anthologies, including A Slow Combusting Hymn, which was, as somebody mentioned, Carolyn, was published and edited by Kit Callan and myself a few years ago. For the last 3 years, she has been a community teaching assistant with ModPo, an international online course on modern American poetry run out of the University of Pennsylvania. A member of Blue Room Poets, Linda has helped establish Poetry at the Pub in Western Lake Macquarie. Linda Ryland.
Thank you. If I could borrow an expression from your lyrical Professor Jane, this is my little example of tentative human witness. Whale fossil at Ionita, New Zealand. Time caught your great death. On an ocean floor I now walk, ruminating with cattle and half-curious tourists, expecting more than this smattering of bone fragments beneath the understatement of a simple glass shelter. Remote from flesh memory, You have become slow limestone's image, developed in the chemicals of geology's enduring class darkroom. Your elusive curves of bone emerge now into shape, sharpen my focus. I press my autumn mouth to the cold glass as if to breathe you back, but you would now be beached, stranded in a wild South Island field where bony limestone outcrops fret and worry with their giant grey skulls like old men at their own wasting. Better that you lie still in the soft ignorance of rock, where I am left guessing at the missing fragments of a story we partially share. There has been effort in this little coincidence, more than my short and easy walk down a damp path in soft morning sunlight. I will lay a small cairn of words, fashioned stone for cold stone, to mark my passing here and our gentle, unerodable connection. Thank you.
Okay, we are nearly at our final two readings, but we have a special treat today. Daniel Ionita is just a wonderful poet, but more than that, he has done such substantial work in having poetry, Romanian poetry, translated and made accessible. He's done that on the international stage. He's done that in collaboration with Daniel and other editors, so they are a wonderful team in making that kind of bilingual project possible. The joy of today is that Daniel has actually brought a friend with him who he'll introduce, and they're going to show us that lovely moment where poetry is translated and made accessible from one language to the other. So thank you, Daniel.
Thanks. First of all, what a privilege. I mean, Jean Kent, Judith Beveridge, David Musgrave, Martin Langford, Judy Johnson, Stephen, Edgar, Linda Ireland. I mean, I am among them as well. I relate to the students. I am with you guys, with the big stars. It's just amazing. And really, really appreciate your poetry as well. Just fantastic. So Carolyn has asked me to present an exotic moment. We are the exotic show here. A bilingual poem. So what we will do, something we've never done, is actually read a poem, one word in Romanian and one in English, and then one in Romanian, one in English. See how it comes out. No, we are not going to do that. Don't worry about it. It's crazy. So, however, because Carolyn has asked me to kind of show the difference in the musicality and the prosody, you know, the way a language sounds, and obviously we'll have the familiar English following it from the Romanian. I've chosen a, God forbid, a rhymed and metered poem. I know the high priestesses of postmodernism think that this is at best quaint and at worst just a no-no, you just don't do it. However, partly because I wanted to understand the musicality and partly because I'm a sociopath who likes to inflict pain, here we go. I'm going to... Catalin Anastase, by the way, he is an accomplished actor. He played in movies and plays, and he's also doing us a favor of filming and recording this. I'll let him start.
Mă tot mir, văleleu dacă-s eu. Cine-s eu? Pui de zmeu, paraleu sau zălut teleleu? M-am născut undeva o jartea, jagardea, tinichea, giurumea, iar copii am avut aici și colo de-am vrut sau n-am vrut.
I keep wondering what sham, if I am who I am. Some young lion in flight, full of might, without fear, drinking beer, or some crazy old blight. I've been born from a scare, I've been raised here and there, and my children conceived far and wide from favors received.
Am plecat peste mări. M-am întors peste țări. M-am pierdut printre zări. Aiurit. păcălit, amețit, jigodit și smucit de coțcar, de muieri, chiar și azi, chiar și ieri, printre veri, primavera.
Across oceans I've flown, countries not of my own, oft returning at dawn, quite confused and abused by some women amused in some fanciful twills, crazy swells. Every summer and spring, foolish king, some have had me quartered and drawn, each new day just like yesterday, torn.
Și mă zbat lângă pat, despuiat, supărat și încruntat, pentru bani, gologani, ani și ani, fără rost, ca un prost.
Now I dread near my bed, empty, naked, unfed, angry stirs laced with dread, wistful wish to be rich, money bitch, scratch my itch.
Dar mă rog, în final, într-un hal fără hal, ca țiganul la mal, mai mereu mă mint că sunt eu, că sunt smeu, că sunt leu, paraleu. Însă e greu, fiindcă eu nu sunt eu. Sau de sunt pe cuvânt că rămân doar un biet și zălud teleleu.
Anyway, in the end, like a drunk on the mend, I just lie and pretend that it's me every day, pretty please if I may, without fear drinking beer, mighty lion in flight, vain delight. But it's simply a lie, for I cannot deny that it's me, and I swear that I'll be just some crazy old blight. Thank you.
I'm relieved you didn't clap before I started. Seeing deep. Life is a fine tapestry, looping together the magic with the tragic. It is viewed from the inside out. Plumbing life's meaning courts frustration, while failing to focus on its sense is the art of fools. Those we love are no less deep if we take a moment to explore. She cannot be captured in a single snap, let alone a catalogue of images. Nor is she fathomed in a lifetime of loving, although I come close. Perhaps the one we call God is also much more than our idols, our metaphors, our careful credos. What if he is our mother and she is our father? What if God is larger and smaller, weaker and stronger, wilder and tamer, older and younger, closer and farther, one and a few? Maybe if we chance a deeper glance, we unearth a God who is greater than God. Then it's my privilege to actually give some closing comments. Avondale, as you know, is pushing the envelope in terms of fostering a research culture. However, I think if it forgets its past in nurturing people who value the arts, it will lose something of very great value. Poetry in particular is a very human enterprise. To quote Dylan Thomas, poetry is what in a poem makes you laugh, cry, prickle, be silent, makes your toenails twinkle, makes you want to do this or that or nothing, makes you know that you're alone in the unknown world, that your bliss and suffering is forever shared and forever your own. So the publication of a volume of poetry, a lot of it from Avondale students, is a very important thing. However, I would remind you to keep your feet on the ground as well. Don Marquis said, publishing a volume of verse is like dropping a rose petal down the Grand Canyon
and waiting for the echo. We should remember, though, that rose petals are best scattered at the highs and lows of human experience, not down the Grand Canyon. And many of the poems in this book express those times really well. So thank you for coming today. And let's keep our feet on the ground as well, because I'm going to invite you to have some lunch. I'm told it's a light lunch, so go steady on it. Thank you very much.